Brothers and sisters of the infinite, welcome to chapter 18 of REN-SHEN Half Spirit, the final chapter of book 1. Steve was fully aware of the difference between himself as a man and the God who could channel his line and the great 5 ancestor spirits. He was a different entity as REN-SHEN. Everything was more vivid. His feet felt as though they had sprung roots into the ground, and his breathing transformed into vibrations which presented an awareness of the space around him in a way which was far beyond the ability of humans. REN-SHEN could feel traces or essences of spirits, both past and present, through these vibrations. He could feel where they had been and even sensed where battles had been fought. His lion spirit had also transformed. It had become even more ferocious as a consequence of his deification in the spiritual sanctuary. When summoned, it now presented characteristics similar to the Shisa. In truth, Steve knew nothing more about REN-SHEN than he knew about himself before his transformation. But the change was all-consuming. Incredibly powerful sensations were ever present and rippling beneath his human exterior. He had much to learn about himself. Steve had come to appreciate the visceral connections he had made with his own sense of humanity thanks to Ling. She was a reminder of what he once was. However, since the emergence of REN-SHEN, her interactions with him had become stilted and awkward. Steve was disappointed to lose the stolen moments of intimacy they had shared. Another part of his life had been cut short again due to his own actions. It particularly affected him because as REN-SHEN breathed his vibrations, he became immediately aware of Ling's pregnancy. As REN-SHEN, it was simply a factual observation with an immediate assessment of the potential for immortality attached to the female fetus in her womb. But as Steve, it was something impossible to process, devoid of emotion. His son was already fatherless somewhere in the world, and the chance of a normal upbringing for his future daughter also seemed extremely unlikely. Steve was finally able to approach Ling and discuss his concerns. He said, "I don't understand what's happening to me, but I'm still a man. I've cherished the intimacy we've shared, and I honestly don't know what our future can be." Ling interjected, "You are not human. You were already an immortal, and now you are a god. I literally watched you become a god. Our life can never be normal, and I do not even know how to talk with you. I am nobody, and your destiny grows every day. How can I look at you? Gods have their own problems, and I'm not able to help you even if I was able to understand your problems." Steve understood her confusion and said, "I feel the same way about myself. I don't know how to deal with my nature. I know I've changed. I feel things differently and I see the world in a way that I never did before. But I'm still a man and I care about you and our baby. Can we try to find a way?" She glared at him with her blank, matter-of-fact expression. "Of course you know about the baby. You know everything now, I suppose. I stole some happiness with you, but I cannot see a future for us. At least I can love our child and have some company on these mountains. I was thrown away as a child. I'm ready to be a mother and I will love my child. It's enough for me." "I don't even know where my son is. What kind of father can I be to our daughter?" Steve said. Ling's piercing green eyes lit up with excitement. "Daughter? Will we have a daughter?" She quickly calmed herself and extinguished any trace of excitement and said, "Do you think your destiny is to tend to our child? Maybe read books to her?" "No. Evil in this world is building, and you, REN-SHEN, with your warrior powers, are destined to meet them. You are a good man, now be a good god. Fight for the infinite and defend on the side of humanity. I will raise our daughter." Steve knew he had lost his chance for normality. His destiny was unknown, but Ling was correct, yet again. Her logic was difficult to refute, and although REN-SHEN's purpose was yet to be fully realised, Steve could feel a resolve building within himself. His energy was coming from that resolve. He spent many evenings discussing his transformation with Si-Ming. Both Si-Ming and REN-SHEN understood the necessity to answer questions of the infinite with riddles and questions. This was REN-SHEN's destiny, and his supernatural existence came about from the pool of humanity who were calling for him. Siming could not answer much about REN-SHEN's destiny, but was confident of the purpose of his deification. REN-SHEN was a call for justice. Just as REN-SHEN looked at Siming and immediately fully understood his purpose as the director of destinies, Siming saw REN-SHEN as a god of justice. REN-SHEN knew the time was nearing to find his destiny outside of the spiritual sanctuary. Steve had never felt as peaceful as he did during his time in the spiritual sanctuary. He spent some time with Pig, who seemed to know Steve was leaving soon and kept trying to climb into Steve's arms. Steve was crestfallen as he realised he was looking at yet another casualty of his destiny. Am I destined to be alone forever? He thought to himself as he lifted the very fully grown Pig into the air. That evening he again discussed his path with Siming. The importance of the sword was again stressed to REN-SHEN. It's part of the reason why you are now a god. Think of what it can do in the hands of someone who truly understands the magic in it. You must claim the sword and learn its power at all costs. The sword is inside you, but it also remains in the hands of evil. There are many like the Kumicho you describe. Zhao Duyi has now truly embraced his evil form as one of the few. He has chosen darkness, but the darkness has chosen him also. You have a curious existence. Your human nature is linked to your divine nature. It will not be easy to manage your duality. First, you must explore your powers as a god, but you must also ensure you do not lose what makes you human. Your duality is what makes you remarkable. As a man, you will be able to go anywhere unnoticed, and your divine purpose as arbiter of justice is best served among mankind. REN-SHEN walked throughout the entire spiritual sanctuary that evening, his eyes pulsing their orange glow. His breathing vibrations revealed much about his home for the last 3 years. Great powers had tried to claim the sanctuary for thousands of years. He sensed the enormity of their demonic energy and also the power of the resistance which kept the celestial oasis sustained. He walked among the perfect trees in the forest and realized even they held a defensive power in the sanctuary. Everything had a purpose in the sanctuary, and the preconditions for forging REN-SHEN's divinity were plain to see from a god's perspective. The energy of the sanctuary was tied to the power of the earth's creation. The mountain formation and rivers and trees and orientations were all tributes to the infinite. A great place of connection, Steve thought to himself as he emerged from the perfect little forest. He smiled as it occurred to him that the literal translation of Shaolin meant nothing more than little forest. Yet he could not find the words to describe the magnificence of the great 5 ancestors of Shaolin. Steve rested his body that night. He thought about what Siming said about the duality in his existence. Holding on to his humanity was beginning to feel like nothing more than holding on to his self-doubts and his suffering. His humanity was his weakness. And yet Steve also understood where the call for justice came from. He always had a sense of justice, a desire to right wrongs. Those very human doubts and losses he had suffered were the precursor, and the sword and spiritual sanctuary were the catalysts in REN-SHEN's creation. But still, answers to questions he couldn't even articulate continued to evade him. He knew he had no choice. He needed to find his way back to Japan. It was essential to claim the sword. He knew absolutely nothing else about what he would do after that. A return to this sanctuary to examine the power of the sword with Siming seemed logical. The idea appealed to him. He would quickly return and spend time with Ling. Perhaps he would sense something about the sword as REN-SHEN and determine his destiny thereafter. Among all his fears and doubts, the call for justice within him was absolute. He could feel that call to justice as Steve, but as REN-SHEN it was something more. It was his divine energy, his purpose, and he was resolute. He would destroy Kumicho. He settled and found his dream. His fighting and lion spirits had converged and stood before him. REN-SHEN had to choose which energy he required, the power of Emperor Taizu, the nimbleness of the golden monkey, or perhaps his ferocious lion. He awoke to an intense vibration. Siming had appeared before him. "Breach," he said. "Hurry, they have found a way inside." Steve's eyes pulsed to their orange glow as he became REN-SHEN. He dashed through the temple looking to ensure Ling's safety. Ling was already standing outside in a fighting stance. She was already emitting her green glow by the time REN-SHEN and Ximing had reached her. They all embraced the magnitude of the army of demons filtering through the breached cave entrance. The wrathful red demonic eyes were all the same, but the creatures were of all shapes and sizes. Many were human-like, some were serpentine in character, and others were gruesome dogs. The most hideous were human-shaped with claws and black bat-like wings, the span of small houses. There was no doubt about the demonic horde's trajectory. They were all headed for the temple. As if to shine a beacon for them, the white, orange and green respective glows of Ximing, REN-SHEN and Ling in front of the temple gave the army a precise focal point. They were drawing closer and the noise was intensifying. The cacophony of growls, barks, hisses and shrieks combined to send a message of nothing less than a declaration of war. REN-SHEN's vibrations revealed the presence of a powerful dark energy. It was something more than the army of demonic creatures. Ximing said, "You can feel his presence. He has grown." The evil orchestra of noise ceased abruptly and the demonic horde stopped their march and stood eerily still. A man emerged from the evil throng. REN-SHEN saw how many of the demons were tethered to the man as he confidently walked towards them. He was a different man, but was surprisingly familiar. He was precisely the same type of evil monster as Kumacho. He was carrying a sword and smiling wickedly as he called for Ximing. "Ximing, it is time for your reckoning. I have come for you and demand nothing less than all of your powers from the infinite. Offer yourself and I will spare the sanctuary. Otherwise I will destroy every part of this, your holiest of places," he said. Ximing whispered to REN-SHEN, "Zhao Duyi. His power is totally different. He carries the entire darkness of chaos within him now. The sword he carries has also given him new insight and abilities." Zhao spoke as though he was right next to Ximing. "Yes, old man of the mountains, I do have a new insight. I see your powers and I know how to take them. Offer yourself freely and I will not do any more damage than is necessary." Ximing turned to REN-SHEN and Ling and said, "Expect the unexpected," as he disappeared, then reappeared directly in front of Zhao, quickly touching him on the chest. He sought to command Zhao Duyi's 3 Deathbringers. It was pointless. The man was an immortal, and the 3 Deathbringers had long been destroyed inside the powerful demon. Zhao sliced his sword straight through Ximing's neck. The blade did nothing. It looked as though it merely went through a holographic representation of Ximing. REN-SHEN was relieved to see Ximing unharmed. Even though he was becoming increasingly aware of his own powers, he was completely unaware of any weaknesses he had. It was comforting to see Ximing survive the attack without consequence. Zhao Duyi began to roar with laughter. The throng of demons joined in as Ximing's white glow began to fade, and then his image began to flicker like a faulty light bulb. REN-SHEN looked at Ling as they both attempted to digest the impossible outcome. Ximing was extinguished. Zhao Duyi led the demonic horde closer to the temple when both Ling and REN-SHEN heard the concerned voice of Ximing. "I cannot find my physical form. It is unavailable to me. You must not allow this force of evil to claim the spiritual sanctuary." REN-SHEN sprinted towards Zhao. He quickly reached fighting range. Ling was already alongside REN-SHEN, glowing green and poised to fight. She shouted at Zhao, "I never trusted you. I warned Ximing and expected your betrayal the moment I met you." Zhao looked bemused. He was cautiously looking at REN-SHEN and listening to Ling. He laughed and focused his glare on her. "The little leftover girl speaks. Look at her now. She glows green and maybe has learned magic tricks from Ximing. I should have killed her when I left this pigsty last time." He returned his focus to REN-SHEN and said, "You look interesting to me. You saw how quickly I disposed of Ximing. Do you think either of you have any chance against me? Prepare to die." Zhao Duyi stepped forward, but was immediately taken aback when he heard REN-SHEN respond. REN-SHEN, with his deep, vibrating voice, said, "I make no empty promises about death. You tried to destroy a god and now you must face justice. You will pay for your actions." A demon dog leapt at Ling. She quickly evaded it with her golden monkey movements. Serpents slithered towards her feet while she launched her bird spirit at them and disintegrated them. REN-SHEN remembered Siming saying that Zhao's sword was possibly linked to the great Emperor Taizu. He recalled how much more powerful he became when he touched the sword of Bodhidharma with Kumicho. He summoned the spirit of Emperor Taizu so he might harness the energy of the sword. The Emperor's glow surrounded REN-SHEN. Zhao almost doubled in size and transformed into a hideous caricature of himself. He shouted at REN-SHEN, "You dare to threaten me with the spirit of my very own ancestor?" REN-SHEN didn't hesitate as he launched his attack with the spirit and directness of Emperor Taizu. He went straight for the hand holding the sword in an attempt to minimize the blade's swinging potential. Zhao responded immediately, but his hand only managed to move a few centimeters before REN-SHEN reached the blade. REN-SHEN immediately realized the wrong choice had been made. Selecting the spirit of Emperor Taizu against his own blade created an explosive event. Instead of multiplying his power, the collision of forces triggered a reaction, creating a powerful blast of energy. REN-SHEN was repelled over 50 meters and Zhao defiantly unaffected by the blast as he roared with wicked delight. REN-SHEN had converted back to Steve. His disorientation and physical pain clouded his ability to flash into REN-SHEN. In the distance, he saw Ling fighting furiously against the horde of demons. Her green bird energy looked almost fully formed for the first time. It was the outline of a bird Steve had never seen before, glorious in its magnitude and fierce in its intent. The demons were quickly dealt with, but they were building around her. He calculated she would soon be overwhelmed. Steve needed REN-SHEN immediately, but could not connect himself to the other side of his duality. A number of winged demons took flight and hovered above Ling while other demons headed for the forest. There were too many. Ling was fighting and defending the spiritual sanctuary on her own, while Steve was still trying to find his feet. Zhao raised his hand at the winged demons hovering above Ling. He gestured towards Ling and then the winged creatures blasted fire from their fanged mouths at her. She sent her bird spirit into the air and it created a barrier against the flames. More winged demons gathered until she was surrounded by flames. Steve was helpless to assist. He managed to find enough of his human strength to stand up. He attempted to summon his lion spirit, but he had lost his connection to the infinite. Ling's bird energy was fading. She would be overpowered soon. The more he tried, the worse it became. His spiritual center had escaped him, and he was at his lowest ebb when he felt a jarring thud against his legs. He looked down and focused his eyes in the darkness to see his ever-faithful black Pig looking up at him with an impassioned plea. Pig was nudging Steve forwards towards the battle, and his display of loyalty and justice registered strongly with Steve. Something about the loyal creature of Earth gave Steve his much-needed immediate connection to humanity. Steve found the necessary gateway to the infinite and welcomed its eternal power. He had found his spirits, and REN-SHEN finally returned from the infinite. Pig had already charged towards the battle. Ling's bird spirit had faded into the faintest of barriers against the flames raining down upon her. Demons were still trying to attack her at ground level, and Zhao was walking purposefully towards REN-SHEN. His focus was singular, and his intent was nothing less than annihilation. In the darkness, Zhao failed to see or care about the black 150-kilogram mass charging towards him. He was bowled over by the determined and loyal Pig. REN-SHEN sent his lion spirit towards Zhao and sprinted towards Ling, but it was too late. The flames had finally reached and engulfed her. She had succumbed to the relentless fiery attacks of the winged demons. Left in her place was a charred statue of that mysterious little woman with the power of 1,000 men. She was kneeling towards the temple, her head bowed down with hands held high in prayer position. She was praying to the infinite in her death and maintained her mystery even until her final moment. Pig stood by her charred remains and defended the burnt tribute to her greatness from the gloating serpentine demons near her. REN-SHEN's lion spirit returned to him after pummeling Zhao. The image of Ling trapped in her final moment and carrying Steve's child was soul-destroying for Steve, for REN-SHEN had invoked a calling from deep within. He summoned Ling's green bird spirit. It was familiar to him. Steve and Ling had often shared their spirits during their fighting and lovemaking. When REN-SHEN summoned the bird spirit, it was red instead of green. He sent it towards that beautiful woman with the green eyes as a protective shield to encase her blackened form. As it reached her remains, the red glow disappeared and the glowing red energy shield was absorbed into the blackness of her charred, tributary pose. REN-SHEN turned his attention to Zhao. His wrath manifested itself as the brightest orange glow from his eyes, and his breathing vibrations were causing ripples in the air, which were troubling to the network of demons within his proximity. They were all connected to Zhao, and the look on his demonic face indicated he could feel their confusion. REN-SHEN would not make the same mistake by summoning Emperor Taizu's spirit. He embraced the Luohan spirit, and the outline of 16 energized arms joined his 2 existing arms to engage in combat with Zhao. He created a vortex of interdimensional magnitude, spinning the nearby demons around him and Zhao. Zhao's use of Taizu's sword was precise and logical. The sword was indeed powerful. REN-SHEN could feel the majesty of its power as he generated the circular vortex of the 18 hands of Luohan. Zhao didn't waste time attacking arms. He went straight towards REN-SHEN's heart with his blade. One of Luohan's spiritual arms intercepted the blade and was severed in the process of diverting it away from REN-SHEN's body. The momentary diversion was enough time for REN-SHEN to bridge the distance between them. He reached in and grabbed Zhao by the throat. REN-SHEN was compelled to feel the powerful demon's energy. Zhao's black eyes glared back at REN-SHEN's orange, luminous eyes. "You can join us, you know, or you can be destroyed. The few can never be destroyed," Zhao said in a choked and guttural voice. REN-SHEN contracted his fingers tighter around Zhao's throat while curiously noting how the demon reacted to the immensity of his power. REN-SHEN was squeezing the human life force out of his opponent. It wasn't enough. He wanted Zhao to fully grasp the justice he was delivering. He dragged Zhao closer to the burned remains of Ling in her ultimate and solemn pose. He would destroy Zhao in front of her charred remains. Dragging Zhao towards Ling, REN-SHEN surveyed the spiritual sanctuary. The demons were innumerable and unleashing their devastation on the temple and surrounding tributes. Punctured and bleeding Pig was still defending Ling's corpse from the many-fanged serpentine and dog demons trying to reach her. REN-SHEN stomped on a vicious dog demon with its fangs firmly embedded in Pig's hindquarters. He turned to Zhao and said in his low-pitched growl, "Everything dear to me has been taken by monsters who seek their glory in exchange for the suffering of humans. Your punishment is my justice." He used his grip on Zhao's throat to slam him on the ground. He kneeled down and continued to crush his throat while the demons tethered to Zhao attempted to attack REN-SHEN from behind. Their attempts were futile as REN-SHEN's energy was too strong for the lowly servants of evil. REN-SHEN began to feel the pulse of another god in the spiritual sanctuary. The vibrations were intoxicating, immediate, and were connecting him to his celestial identity in a way he had never experienced before. The cosmos was being further woven into himself. He assumed Si-Ming had found a new physical form, but it was different, and he was reacting to it in an unprecedented manner. As the pulses increased in frequency and loudness, REN-SHEN realized Ling's charred body in prayer was the source of the powerful oscillations. The energy being generated pleased him. More than the opium at his weakest moment, and indeed more than any natural phenomena he had ever experienced as a human. What was, until a few moments earlier, a source of pain for Steve, somehow gave REN-SHEN an intoxicating pleasure. He was absorbing the radiation from the new energy source with an almost drunken joy. The feeling was so intense he had to let go of Zhao's throat. Steve opened his arms and legs to feel the incredible energy pulse through him. Zhao was also feeling the impact of the radiation sourced from the infinite. He tried to turn his disgusting head away from Ling's remains. It was slowly forcing him back into his human form as he writhed in pain. Ling's charred solemnity was interrupted with what commenced as a subtle red glow. It very quickly became so intensely bright that even Pig had to move further away from the powerful energy source. Her burned remains were no longer discernible. The charred corpse had been replaced with a bright, volcanic red, egg-shaped monolith. The light energy emanating from the glowing monolith was impossibly hot, and the oscillations increased in volume and frequency until the entire moonlit sanctuary began to pulse in synchronization. REN-SHEN intuitively understood the energy generating from the monolith was celestial in nature. The celestial pulses were anathema to the demons as they ceased their trails of destruction and attempted to steady themselves against the celestial forces of the infinite. Suddenly the monolith exploded, and a powerful and relentless stream of red energy shot upward into the heavens. The powerful beam unified Earth with the infinite and set the sky on fire, turning night into day. The horde of demons throughout the entire sanctuary looked sickened by the event as lightning bolts from the sky of fire energized the spiritual space. Suddenly, a deafening shriek echoed throughout. Piercing the fiery heavens and descending on the back of a giant red phoenix was a woman in a green dress with eyes of pulsing green light and a streak of green through her long black hair. It was a deified Ling, and Ximing's voice could be heard by REN-SHEN. A goddess has been born. The mysterious woman of the 9 heavens, Lady Jutian Shan-Yu, goddess of war and sexual alchemy, the twice-born. I cannot believe I didn't foresee it. Such is her mystery. The goddess reached closer to REN-SHEN in the demonic fray, which was beginning to reanimate. REN-SHEN was able to communicate with Xuan-Nu without even talking. The trees he revealed to her cosmic awareness, and she acted immediately. She pulled on the clouds which appeared to be her phoenix's reins, and her sublime phoenix changed its path and headed towards the forest next to the temple. Her green eyes flashed a bright green light over the entire forest. The rows of perfectly arranged trees began to shudder violently. The leaves were cast off and the bare trees transformed into 1,000-strong army of impeccable, orange-robed Shaolin monk warriors. The monks immediately entered the battle with the ground-level demons, administering their perfectly honed techniques. Of the Shaolin 5 ancestors, Shan-Yu exacted her justice on every single one of the winged demons, using clouds of red fire to destroy them. REN-SHEN returned his attention to the demonic Zhao Duyi. Zhao tried to reach his sword, but REN-SHEN was too fast. He kicked away the sword and roared with his internalized lion spirit as he flashed through all his available spirits instinctively while fighting a reinvigorated Zhao. REN-SHEN realized he was fighting an extremely powerful force, yet his powers from the infinite had every answer he needed, for as long as he allowed his celestial connection. Zhao tried everything to distract REN-SHEN. Agari should have killed you when he killed your wife, he said. REN-SHEN flashed into Steve and wondered how Demon Zhao knew about his loss. Zhao used the talon which replaced his hand to strike at Steve. Steve pulled his head back in time, and the talons broke the skin on his chest. Steve's eyes flashed orange, and REN-SHEN spared no quarter to the vicious demon. His white crane spirit trapped his talon, and he summoned the Grand Emperor to spear his fingers into Zhao's throat. He roared as he ripped off Zhao's head and crushed it under his stomping foot. The demons tethered to him immediately evaporated as REN-SHEN turned to survey the spiritual sanctuary. The army of monks had already destroyed the demons and had begun restoring the temple. One monk approached REN-SHEN and respectfully collected Emperor Taitsu's sword and saluted REN-SHEN as he ran to place the sword inside the temple. Shan-Yu had destroyed every last one of the winged demons and landed her phoenix near the temple. She was walking towards REN-SHEN with her eyes glowing green. REN-SHEN looked down at the remains of the demon Zhao, who had returned to his human form with his head detached. He noticed a black smoky gel on the ground leaking from the severed head. It was being absorbed into the ground. REN-SHEN reached down and dipped his finger in the last of the gel before it disappeared. He tasted the bitter black substance and instantly understood the full breadth of the demon's evil as it caused his body to briefly convulse and temporarily lose connection to the infinite. He heard the familiar grunts of Pig, who limped over to him and affectionately rubbed his bloodied face on REN-SHEN's leg. He patted Pig on the head and walked towards the mysterious woman of the 9 heavens. "That was interesting. You still carry our baby, you know," he said to her. She replied, "I know everything." They watched the army of monks restore order to the spiritual sanctuary with the same precision they used in battle. When they finished, They arranged themselves in formation and silently reverted to the perfectly arranged trees they once were. REN-SHEN surveyed the spiritual sanctuary one last time and then beheld the glory of the goddess in the green dress before him. The ever mysterious Jutian Shanyu. "Fly me to Okinawa," he said. Brothers and sisters of the infinite, that was chapter 18, Breach, the final chapter of REN-SHEN Half Spirit. We saw our God destroy a demon, one of the few. We're going to learn more about those demons, I fear, come book 2. What a sequence of events, my friends. Come on, tell me you don't want to see that in a movie. I dare you to tell me you do not want to see that in a movie. Where do we start? He still had his doubts. REN-SHEN's a god, but Steve is a man. It seems to be rare in the celestial world. We've got someone who has got both identities, a duality, if you like. So we've got Steve and REN-SHEN. Ming had it right. He said, well, as a human, you can get to places, you can get around. Mingle, get in right in the thick of things as a normal human being, but then you've got your God, and the God is the arbiter of justice. Seeks out these demons. He can sort them out. He sorted Zhao Duyi out, didn't he? And what's up with that? There was a breach. It all happened. Before that, Steve was talking to Ling. Ling just said, where are you going? You're a god. I can't even talk to you. There's no point. We're in different planets, you and I. And interestingly, if we look at some Buddhist texts, that gave me a little bit of inspiration for this, where a question was put to Buddhists where, do you believe in God? And Buddhists, from my readings, have one of the things I read was the suggestion that Buddhists say, well, whether we believe in gods or not is kind of irrelevant. All we're trying to do as human beings is try and achieve, a higher level of awareness, to become Buddha. So do we believe in gods? Some do, some don't, but it's kind of an irrelevant question. It's the problems of gods are very different to the problems of humans in their estimations. So I thought that was a really interesting way to think about it. So here we are with Steve. As a human, he's got his issues. As a god, another world that we couldn't possibly begin to comprehend. So all that happened, and Ling was, he wanted to be a father for his daughter as well as his son. 2 different mothers. It's getting interesting, isn't it? So she said, well, no, this is just not going to work. Are you going to read books to her? You're meant to be killing these demons. Go and sort this stuff out. Destroy evil. You're a god. Do what gods do. Be a good god. She kind of made sense, even as a human. Ling, she's just a freak. She never gets it wrong. The mysterious woman of the 9 heavens. Oh, we'll talk about her in a minute. Anyway, there was a breach. They got in. Zhao Duyi, he'd been there before. He'd already fooled Ming in the past. Obviously, it had been fortified. There was no way he was going to get in. He found a way. A breach. He was in. Ming foolishly, or what? I mean, he's a god. He knows everything. Does he? The demons have duped the gods forever. Gods of the celestial realm have always been sort of amused with those demons. If we look at biblical stuff, then, what we call demons now, or Satans, used to be angels. So from a biblical perspective, or from an Abrahamic perspective, we could say maybe they're not that different. Maybe they've just chosen the dark side. I don't know. We can delve into that a bit more later on. But the point being is, Ming went there and thought he might have a go at trying to calm down Zhao Duyi. He touched his chest and sought his 3 deathbringers. It wasn't going to work. Zhao Duyi was already connected to chaos. He was already attached to the darkness, wasn't he? sliced his sword straight through Si-Ming. Very powerful sword. One of the great 5 ancestors of Shaolin, his own sword, an emperor. Didn't kill Si-Ming, but it kind of lost his connection with what was possible on this plane of existence. So Si-Ming was kind of put out of the picture very early. It was left to Steve and REN-SHEN in his duality, and Ling. Ling didn't muck around. She was already there before everyone. She was ready to fight. She's fierce. Gotta love Ling. Okay, so Ling was out there. Battle was on. She was sorting out demons. Her bird was almost fully formed. Steve was starting to see. REN-SHEN was looking at it and saying, that's looking like something. I can almost figure it out. I just don't know. I can almost see it. It went on. Steve went and attacked Zhao Duyi. REN-SHEN went and attacked Zhao Duyi, used Zhao Duyi's own ancestor. Wrong move, bad move. Got expelled, got bounced off of him in an explosive event. And he lost his god, didn't he? He lost his duality. He was a very weak Steve Nedelkin at that point, sitting on the ground, bounced away, getting laughed at. Couldn't find his god, couldn't find his attachment to humanity at that point. He really just nothing. Where did he get it from? Got back on his feet, and his beloved pig, 150 kilograms of mirth, of black coolness, came along and nudged him at his feet, said, go for it, bro. Get in there. I know you can do it. I believe in you. Somehow it worked. Steve had bonded with Pig. It's been 3 years in the spiritual sanctuary, carrying him on his arms. You've got to be joking. He found his REN-SHEN. He went for it. While that was going on, Ling was dead. She'd been wiped out. She fought valiantly. It was incredible. What a battle. She was fighting off the winged demons, fighting off the serpentine snake things, the dogs, everything. She had it all going with the hundreds, thousands of them, and she was managing them. Fierce. What a fierce woman she was. It was just too much. And in her dying moments, as the flames engulfed her, she just prayed and believed in the temple. Prayed and believed in the spiritual sanctuary, and everything had been denied to her. She was kicked out of her home, given up by her mother, the third daughter of a third daughter. Just a leftover, good for nothing. She had no future anywhere. And yet Si-Ming listened to her every time. Okay. All right, interesting. Well, pulsing in the spiritual sanctuary, energy pulses, the whole place throbbing. All of a sudden, Steve had somehow thought, you know what, I'll protect that charred remain. There's no way that she deserves to be attacked in her death. He actually used, Steve's a bit of a gatherer of spirits in a way. He had her bird spirit almost down. He kind of figured it out. He sent it towards her in a red form. He couldn't manage the green by the look of things, but he found the red. He found the red. So he shot it at her, and then this monolith, this egg-shaped thing. Well, it was an egg. It's kind of cool, isn't it? So she's kind of born from that in a sense. Started glowing red, and the whole sanctuary was pulsing. And then this red light shone out, this explosion shot into the sky, joining the earth to the infinite. And it was a connection, and it sent a bright red light right up into the sky. Lightning was shooting down. The whole sky was on fire, a red fire. Come on, I want to see that in a movie. All of a sudden, shrieks. This red phoenix comes down. You've got to be joking. This phoenix comes out of the sky, and it's not Ling, but we know it's her, but it's kind of different, isn't it? She's got these green eyes, green dress, Steve somehow knew, REN-SHEN kind of knew. He said, just messaged her, you know, whatever gods do, sort of sent a bit of God code to her, the trees. He kind of knew it. By the time he'd become REN-SHEN, he'd go in that forest and he knew those trees would be helping him anytime he needed them. Well, he needed them. She needed them. She knew. She woke them up. She said, let's go. The trees shook off their leaves. I said, right, we're Shaolin monks, 1,000 of us. All of them precise. All of them ready to destroy the demons. Methodical. Went through. It was war. It was war in the sanctuary. Ling was controlling her phoenix with clouds as rains. Now let's think about this. The mysterious woman of the 9 heavens, Lady Jutian Shanyu. Well, Jutian is the translation, the pronunciation is terrible, but it means 9 heavens. Shanyu means mysterious woman. Jutian Shanyu. So, did I make it up? Am I that creative? Maybe. Unfortunately, no. Let me tell you that this particular person, in some Kung Fu historical texts, they argue she is the 6th great ancestor of Shaolin. The creator of Dim Mak, the death touch, who can literally touch a person and they die, not necessarily immediately, later on. The last time you would have seen it in Western TV would have been in Kill Bill. So apparently she was the creator of the death touch. Now, the mysterious woman of the 9 heavens. Okay, so if we research her, in fact, incredible. She was in mythology, in Chinese mythology, she advised emperors. She would pick the ones who made the most sense and give them all military strategy. She was extraordinarily powerful, and she was kind of good in the sack too as well, apparently. She was, you know, understood the magic of sexual alchemy and could restore power to people through the process. We talked about that briefly in the previous chapter. So she kind of had these abilities, and the generals and the emperors were kind of pretty keen to win her favor for more than one reason. One is to win a war, and the other one is to get their strength and do all that sort of stuff. So sexual alchemy. So the mysterious woman of the 9 heavens, a very formidable goddess. Now the Chinese like to talk about 9 heavens. Why 9? Because they regard the 10th heaven as perfection. So the 9th heaven is kind of just one off. What does that mean? Well, she was considered a very powerful god. But the idea of talking about the 10th heaven for the Chinese in that sphere of knowledge, is too much to comprehend. The notion of that level of perfection is something they don't like to touch on too much. So 9 heavens, that's where that comes from. So she started dealing with the demons. The monks were sorting out a whole bunch of the other demons as well. REN-SHEN, finally, God, Zhao Du Yi, read the riot act to him, told him exactly what he thought of people like that or demons like that. And he said, this is it. It's over. Ripped his head off. Just literally tore him apart. It wasn't even fair. Not that it needed to be fair. This was justice, had been served. This needed to be done. Zhao Duyi was beyond evil. He was chaos. He was chaos on earth. So, destroyed him. Felt compelled. I don't know why. Why did he do it? Saw that black, smoky, oozy gel. Blood, whatever it was the essence of this demon. Tasted it. He shuddered and he lost his connection to the infinite for a brief moment. But instantly he knew everything about the few. Maybe he needed to do that. Maybe with his role as the arbiter of justice, as one of the people, one of the few, that's a terrible paraphrasing, because Zhao Duyi was one of the few, but maybe REN-SHEN is one of the only opponents on earth that can well and truly deal with the few. So he had to understand them intimately, and he did. He got that taste. Lady Shan Yu hopped off of her phoenix when it landed. She came over to REN-SHEN, and two gods looked each other in the eyes. REN-SHEN looked at her and said, "You still carry our baby?" She said, "I know everything." She knows everything. Oh my God. Oh my goddess. She knows everything. Fair enough too. Okay, she's been through a lot. Poor thing. She's been stuck on that mountain forever. Finally. Well, she kind of knew a lot already. Si Ming relied on her opinion for everything. And this was a bit of a theme going right way back. Her advice has always been good. Her advice has always been useful. So the mysterious woman kept her mystery as a goddess. She's just somehow connected in a way that, well, REN-SHEN kind of doesn't really fully grasp. So all in all, an interesting exercise. Finished the book by saying, fly me to Okinawa. Interesting. Steve, or REN-SHEN, has got a very clear purpose now. It is to absolutely annihilate Kumicho. Absolutely. There is no doubt about that. And that's exactly what he needed. He was ready as soon as he destroyed Zhao Duyi. He said, let's go. Now, fly me to Okinawa. My dear friends, thank you for persisting and hanging around and listening to every one of these chapters, and particularly the reviews. I am halfway through REN-SHEN Secret of Secrets, which is book 2 of the REN-SHEN series. There is a lot to learn. We're going to start getting more of an understanding about the few and how they interact, and how the world runs as a consequence of the presence of the few on Earth. So I appreciate your enthusiasm. I appreciate you hanging around all the way to the end. It's been fantastic. I've got to tell you, this has been so much fun for me. I really would love to see this in a movie, and it's got nothing to do with money. I just want to have fun and be associated with it and say, wow, look at that. That's just exactly what I wanted to see on a big screen. See the fighting, see the demons, and see the gods that are fighting to defend all of us. So that would be so cool. That's my dream anyway. We all got to have dreams, and we keep going until, we get close at least, surely. Maybe that's a good way to deal with it, or to think about it. I have appreciated you. Thank you again. If you know anyone who's interested in the book, please tell them to buy it. It's the only way this whole thing rewards me. But having said that, I'm already very happy. It's been incredible fun. I wrote a bestseller, so that's kind of cool. I look forward to sharing REN-SHEN Secret of Secrets, book 2, with you all as soon as I possibly can. There's work to do. It's getting very complicated, and there are issues everywhere. And we are building into something very intense. My God, can you believe it? I've read every chapter of REN-SHEN Half Spirit. We're done. We've done it. We've reviewed every chapter. We've talked about it. There's a bit of me in there, and there's a bit of you in there. That's life. There's good, there's evil, and then there's gods who deal with it, like REN-SHEN. Thank you for hanging in there with me. Appreciate it. See you soon.